talking to Frank Rocco. He is the head coach of the LCA Bulldogs. Bulldogs get the post-Thanksgiving regional championship game against Turner Ashby. Let's talk about Heritage first. What did you see in that game besides the result that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, our kids executed the game plan just the way we hoped they would. We matched their physicality, which, they're often a physical team, and, their athleticism is tough to keep in check, but, we were in our right spots and, fitting gaps properly, and, we did a good job of being able to keep their speed and athleticism in check. So, yeah, well, all the way around, I thought it was a great effort by our guys.
You guys have a lot of good athletes, but you talked about it, execution. How important is it that you focus on execution and not athleticism to win the game, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's always about precision and execution. We have our fair share of good athletes, good football players, but, as you keep getting further and further into postseason, typically the other teams are going to maybe have a little bit more. So you really got to rely on your precision and your attention to detail.
We're talking on a Wednesday around noon. How's the week of practice been so far?
So far so good, I think. What I've kind of come to realize, you and I have talked over the years, we're not a great practice team. But the things that we do offensively and defensively are kind of higher level in my way of thinking in relation to high school or college. So it almost takes a full week, 5 days of implementing and digesting and executing what the game plan is. And then fortunately enough on Friday, it all kind of clicks and the kids show up and play hard and it works more than it doesn't.
I think every coach would love to say, yes, it's been a great week of practice, but oftentimes, like you've talked about, you said we're not a great practice team. How much does that worry you at the end of the day?
Yeah, it worries me a lot. Yeah, really. And until you can really see it being demonstrated, there's always going to be question marks. But again, I think we've gotten to the point where our kids answer the bell on Fridays and, typically execute the game plan the way it was designed, that we started implementing on Monday. It just doesn't look very good on Monday.
What stands out about Turner Ashby?
Well, I mean, you're talking about athletes. I mean, they've got three, and I would qualify them as elite high school athletes, and they're all similar in size. I mean, they're 6'1", 6'2", they're 210, 215, 220, and they're athletic and speed guys. And when you've got that many guys that can make plays and potentially take it to the house on any given play, it really puts a lot of pressure on your defense in that you've got to have every box checked, and, people have to be fitting properly and showing up in the proper spots every single play, because the minute you misfire or you're not aligned right, they've got the ability to take it to the house.
I hate to use the term perfect game, but has there been a near perfect game that you guys have played on defense this year that you would like to see against Turner Ashby?
I would say our game against Heritage last week was close to it. At the end of the game, we were subbing in second teamers and mixing in, so we didn't have a full first team that finished out the game, and our tackling got sloppy in the fourth quarter there a little bit. But I think for the first three quarters, we played really well.
Your kids can hear and your kids can read. And a lot of times when people talk about LCA, it's not if LCA will win, it's by how much. How do you keep your kids, though, focused on number one, not number two?
Yeah, that's hard. 16-year-old kids, they're on social media, They like to hear about themselves. You want to be told how good you are, and you kind of, makes you believe that you are so good. And, that's where the coaches come into play and keeping them focused and, unfortunately in some cases making them realize that, you aren't all that. And, the only way that we've gotten to where we are is, outworking others and being, a precise, team. And yeah, so the ability to continue to focus on the little things is not an easy skill or an easy thing to maintain.
Before I ask you about keys to the game, if I asked Frank Rocco to define mental toughness, what's the definition that you use?
Yeah. I mean, it's the ability to stay focused through hard things, I think. Whether it's pressure, whether it's, going up against someone that may be individually a little bit bigger, stronger, faster than you, and mentally being able to be locked in on the responsibility or the details that you're having to carry out, and not listen to the talk, being able to separate that out. So there's physical toughness, but then there's mental toughness, and so I think that probably is the depth of toughness.
Is there any specific example you can give to how this LCA team exemplifies what you just said about mental toughness?
Yeah, I mean, I think really what you asked a couple of questions ago is just, how do you remain focused? I mean, it ain't easy. And, we've won, a lot of games in a row here, and it could be very easy to listen to Grandpa tell you how good you are and read the newspaper and they're saying that, you haven't lost in a while and, people are just going to lay down. The reality is, the true competitors, that you typically see in the postseason, I mean, they're coming out to knock you down. They're coming out to show that they belong in the postseason. So we often get everyone's best shot, and sometimes it takes, one quarter to kind of take the wind out of their sails but then sometimes it takes 48 minutes or longer to fight until the very end. So that's the challenge to get 16, 17-year-old kids to buy into fighting and the attention to detail for 48 minutes.
Before I ask you about the keys, does being a parent help the coaching aspect of that? Because, I mean, you've parented teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I honestly was a coach before I was a parent. And so there were some things that maybe I brought into my raising of children from, my experience of coaching and watching other, quality coaches that influenced me and how I might want to influence my own children. But then once you actually experience it as a dad and, the love you have for your children are very similar to, how you love your own players, there is a relationship there for sure.
Give me one key offensively, one key defensively, and one key on special teams that gives LCA a regional title.
Defensively first, I mentioned the three stud athletes they have. So the ability to, in each area, let's say you take three great athletes and you put one out wide to the right, one out wide to the left, and one in the backfield. I mean, that spreads your defense out pretty thin. So, we've got some ideas of how, we're going to spread our defense out in order to still focus on number one. Ironically, they're number one, number two, and number three. So, we've got to be able to know where number one is. We got to know where number two is, and we got to know where number three is. So, to be able to play sound defensive football against all three of those, will be the big thing on defense. Offensively, I mean, I think, very similar to what it was against Heritage, ball control. certainly we're not going to ever turn down an explosive play that turns into points. But, if we can, pound the ball, take care of the ball, keep their offense off the field, then you keep their weapons off the field. So I think the ball control part of how we do things on offense will be important. And then I think, from a special teams perspective, against Heritage last week, we did a really good job in the kicking game, kickoff, being able to harness or corral, their good return guys, and even utilizing a little bit of finesse kicking where you have to kick away from one of their better players and puts us in a better position to be able to rally to the ball. So, I think how we kick off and how we, stay in our lanes and the coverage aspect is going to be key.
Coach, always appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you.